All right.
Hello and good day, eh? Welcome to the Super Good Camping Podcast. My name is Pamela.
I'm Tim.
And we are from supergoodcamping.com. We are here because we are on a mission to inspire other families to enjoy camping adventures such as we have with our kids. Today's guest is a super nice guy that we had the pleasure of meeting in person before interviewing him today. He founded a company called LatLong. They are a new player in the map-making market, but they launched in May 2021 and are based right here in Ontario, Canada. Welcome to the podcast, Arnaud from LatLong Maps.
Yay,
Thank
welcome.
you. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to be here.
Cool.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah. One of us is a bit of a map junkie, so.
Oh, which one of you?
Not her. And I'm slowly building up the collection.
Oh, very nice.
Backwards, but yeah.
We've got to complete that collection.
Maybe
Maybe
we'll
a package will be in the mail soon. A surprise package, maybe.
So first question for me is how does anybody get into maps? But how did you get into making maps?
Well, that's a really good question. So for me, maps are the perfect thing. Like by day, I'm a computer programmer. So I'm a big nerd by nature. I like computers, I like data, I like databases and that sort of stuff. But also in my background, I love graphic design. Like for the longest time in my career, I was like conflicted. Or should I do just graphic design or should I do programming? Can I combine the two? And so that's my day job. I'm a computer programmer in advertising, the advertising industry. So it's a fun industry, I guess, when you're young. As you get older, it gets a bit tiring, the business. But I've always been looking to do my own thing on the side, right? This is the day job, with the realities of holding a job, paying bills and all that. And then there's the passion projects. And I've always been a bit struggling with that. I've always had a huge interest in maps. I'm actually, I graduated like in history, like in university. So that's another story. But like I've always been surrounded by maps and love camping, love the outdoors, of canoeing, fishing. And, one day it's like, why don't I try that? Maybe I like it, and it's more than liking it. I actually love maps, but I fell in love into also the process of making it, which is heavily reliant on databases, things I like naturally, and graphic design. A big portion of it is, sure, there's the data, but how do you make sure that the data is represented in a way that's actually helpful when you are canoeing, right? Well, we do a lot of shore navigation. We look at the landscape to look at features to navigate, and yeah, absolutely love the process, even though
which is a great lead into like we were just talking last night about like the process, like how exactly you don't walk around with a piece of paper drawing down
I wish that would be fun. That sounds like fun. So the process, yeah, is I think it depends a bit for everybody, but nowadays there are like it's about like the clean data sources, and I think that's worldwide, but in Canada has its own history around actually modern systems to make maps. Like the origin of what we call GIS, geographical information systems, actually rooted in Canada, and with funding and efforts from the Canadian government. And for good reason, the size of the country, the difficulties around like mapping what's around the Arctic Circle, doing that by hand, it's impractical. So modern map making is that, right? It's data collected through satellite imagery, aerial photography, with very specific scientific equipment, and there's a whole process of extracting features that are interesting mainly for the government. So yes, the land, the borders and all that, but also, what we can get about natural features like monitoring, forests or more recent history, wildfires. You want to keep an eye on that. So these systems are really about like this massive efforts, right? To have a real grasp of like the landscape, and yeah, and then nowadays that's how it starts. Like at least for me in my process, that's how it starts: pulling the data from government sources, private sources as well, for high resolution imagery, and a lot of correction. Because again, like I think the maps we're using are special maps that are useful for canoeing and camping. This is very different than what other users would need. So
Yeah, no, well, I mean, again, I got map issues. So I've got I probably have 1, 2, 3, potentially 4 different maps of an area, and they're all different.
yeah,
Like looking at it in a canoe route sense, as opposed to a strictly topographical map. I'm looking at not 2 different maps, but two maps that play out differently and aren't showing me, because being the canoe junkie that I am, but one's showing me what I do want to see. The other ones, they're actually not bad for information, but it doesn't do what the canoeing maps do for me.
Yeah, exactly, and that's part of the editorial process, which is another aspect of map making. It's not only what you put in the map; it's also what you decide not to put in the map, right? Like what's important for a particular use, right? Like in my maps, there's very little emphasis on roads. Like you need the major roads to be marked so that you have it helps giving a sense. All right, like for Algonquin would be like Highway 60 needs to be somewhere, right? But like in terms of styling, it's very minimal for me. I don't want like to differentiate that type of road versus that another type if it's not really interesting when you're on your canoe, right? So these are like a small example of the choices you make. But more contentious, I think, is do you decide to put that portage that's unofficial? Should it go in or should it not go in? What's the impact on conservation? But what are the expectations of the people that will use the map and they may be knowledgeable about that portage? So there's also that aspect of editorial. And it ties into another problem of map making, is that traditionally you make a map, the economics of it, if you will, is you've got to print a lot so that the cost per item is gonna be lower. But then you're stuck with, I don't know, thousands of copies of that map, and then something changes. What do you do? Do you put everything in the landfill and go work on the second edition and release it? Like there's that dance. And another thing, I think we all know that like all maps have mistakes, honest mistakes, right? Or things that have changed, things that are like it just errors. And how do you react? How can you quickly fix that? Is it possible to do that? So it's another big aspect of like what I'm trying to do is to actually be able to correct the maps and not be reliant on large print runs to be able to turn a small profit with each map sold. So I could talk on and on about the production process, but it's a huge aspect of it, right? Why is that map not updated yet? Well, it takes a long time and it's expensive, and maybe there's also a lot of copies to go through.
Right. Well, there's a good one. If you had to ballpark, because I'm sure that each map is different and potentially you get better at it as you continue along. But just a rough idea, how long does it take from the time that you go, okay, I'm going to make a map of Queen Elizabeth II wildlands and actually printing one out?
Right. How long is a piece of string?
I knew that was the answer.
It's the answer because it depends. And one like in my part of my process, the first thing would be how clean is the data that the government has processed, right? Because again, given the size of our country, it's complicated. Not everything will be covered the same way, and not everything is interesting to the government equally, right? The areas that would be very interesting for the logging industry, while might get a little bit more attention than other areas, right? So Queen Elizabeth, that's rather close to the city, Toronto, where I'm at. I mean, data is relatively clean. There's still a lot of editing that goes into it. The further north you go, or the deeper in the backcountry, this is where the problems really start to occur, and then where the level of corrections that are required, it starts to be daunting. Like Killarney, there's what you see immediately. It's like, campsites and new campsite numbers. That's not that big of a deal to do that. It's the size of the park and the number of corrections, that need to happen on the coastlines, on the land features, the stuff that's useful for navigation. I walked a year on Killarney. It's a year of walk. Right. So I have a day job. Right? So it's on top of my day job. So I have a military-like routine. I get up at 4 every morning, 7 days a week. And from 4 until 9:30, that's my mapping time. And then I have my real job, bill-paying job, kind of important.
I hear you.
Until 5 or 6, and then weekends and vacations.
Tiny bit of a life, maybe.
Yeah, so that's why it's all in the morning, right? Low impact on family life. That's super key, right? Like I'm a dad, and my kids and my wife, like that's the really important stuff. It's more important than maps, to be honest. But yeah, so that's why the 4 in the morning.
Okay, so I'm gonna segue that I want to ask about the special features that come with your map, and then I want to talk about what you do in your spare time with mom and small people going camping and stuff, right? So
okay.
The first thing that I noticed when I opened up your lovely packaged map was the scale ruler. That's brilliant. So tell me about that. Tell me about a couple of other features, and then let's talk about camping stuff.
Absolutely. So the ruler, right? Like I realized, like I'm a nerd, so I think UTM grid, like everybody knows what the UTM grid is. No, nobody knows or cares about these things, right? Or scale. 1/36,000, 1 centimeter equal 360 meter, right? It's super easy. It's like, what's confusing about that? Well, no, actually, people see a big number and a division, and they're like, "Oh my God, math, help me!" Right? That's normal. So I was like, okay, so there are these things called these UTM readers, these little plastic things that you can use on top of a map, and it's just super helpful things. But there I have like maybe 2 or 3 scales that they support, and I want to use unconventional scales so that the map is appropriate for the area you're going to travel to, and that's a big part of making, I believe, a useful canoe tripping map. So I'm like, well, I can make a ruler, like a bookmark looking ruler for each map, and then that makes it easy. Don't worry about the scale, just measure, and you have a good idea of the distances. And that's the choice like that I've made. Other other map makers put they put the canoe routes on the map and then the distances on the canoe routes. That's another way of doing it. My personal take on that is I like the maps to have as little extra stuff as possible. I like the map to be about the landscape and not about stuff on it, like text and like as that minimal amount is the perfect amount for me, right? It's my preference. I also make
I
the
will
map
echo that
like,
because
okay.
that's one of the things. I'm trying to think who I was talking to recently. We were talking about maps. He's also a map freak, and that's one of the things we dislike about a number of canoeing type maps or backcountry maps is that they get cluttered. There's so many numbers and stuff, and it seems to, and it's blocking part of the topography. So you're looking at a route and you missed that there was an extra step there or whatever because there was a big number on top of it. It's nice to reference those things, but I need to spend more time with your maps. I quite like the ruler idea though.
Yeah, so it's right. It's also trying to maybe a bit unconventional with the form of a map, right? Like and when I started, right, I was like going full on traditional. So map printed both sides, folded, and then it's just that's what you get, right? Like it couldn't be more straightforward. Actually, maps printed both sides, I find them annoying because I'm like planning and I've got constantly guys massive sheet of paper, go like turn it around, and then I use it so much I can't figure out how to fold it back together. Like it's a source of frustration. So I'm like, no, what I like about the government topo maps is that they're printed one side. So that's, if you have several, then it's very easy. You lay them out on the floor on a big table and don't have to flip them around. So that was another thing, like the maps are printed one side. And then, what do you do now? I've got two maps. Like we all have that. Must have that problem as well, Tim. Like start with one shoebox filled with maps, and then there's several shoeboxes filled with maps, and it's untidy and kind of annoying. So, the idea, put them in the map folder, and they go, in the bookshelf. That's another thing. I don't know if people like it. But that's kind of the idea behind it.
Well, it absolutely helps keep things organized as opposed to, a shoebox is like, where is which one? Oh, man.
Well, I was just really interested in the paper. Like, I just think like paper camping, wet canoeing. Tell me about the paper.
I'm so happy you're asking the question because I realize, even though I work in advertising, I don't communicate that very clearly. The people think that the maps look fragile, right? They look delicate because the paper feels like normal paper. But this is one tough paper. That paper, it's the best paper for maps. Like I would not be convinced otherwise. That paper is absolutely amazing. It can take a beating. It's very tough paper. It looks normal, right? You can write on it and all that, like no problem. But try to rip it. Like you will not be able to with your bare hands. And even like typical waterproof paper, you can rip it, no problem. Like it will break. Or other papers that have a lot like rely on coating. The coating will
Eventually flake off.
Remove that, right? It will flake off at the seams. But the paper I'm using is incredible in that way. It's like it looks, so it's nice to the touch, it's soft, it's all that. No, you can. It takes a beating, and the inks as well is important. And the inks are pigmented inks, so they just penetrate through the paper, and they will not wash off. So you can dunk these maps, in the lake. They will dry and be okay. So the paper will be it'll be a little bit crinkly, but it will not dissolve, right? So it's extremely tough paper.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like it just still like waterproof paper. It just Doesn't register.
I know, right? Like, when I was looking at paper samples, like beginning, I'm like, all right, like I want to find, like, because I'm also a paper nerd, I love paper, like took great care in picking the paper for the map folders, that little texture, it's like beautiful, at least to me. And for the maps, I got that sample from that paper. I discarded it because I just thought, well, I asked for waterproof paper samples. This is not waterproof. Discarded it. It looked too fragile, right?
They do.
I know,
and
like
they're light to boot. Like it's not heavy like a lot of the sort of plasticized maps.
Yeah, I know. And then I discarded, and then I'm like, well, I'm gonna try, and then I'm trying to rip it, and I was like blown away. Like, it's not paper. Oh my god, it is paper, but it's not paper.
It's
I'm
super
proud of it. Yeah, super paper. But I think I've done a pretty terrible job at explaining how good that paper is, and because people like tell me like, oh yeah, but like it'd be nice if they were waterproof, and I'm like, oh no, they are waterproof.
Yeah, that's it. It's, I think it needs to be maybe emphasized. People need to.
Well,
they think of plastic. Yeah, that works.
I would totally overlook it too, because canoeing maps are waterproof. That's how that goes. So it's just that's it for me. It's an assumption. Although I did pull it out, I think he said they're waterproof. Why does this feel like normal paper? Shit.
Well, and you said you can also write on it with pencil. And I assume that you can also erase what you've written on it with pencil too, and it won't destroy your map.
Exactly. Yeah, it's another thing, right? I like the idea. Maybe I'm being a bit silly, but I like the idea of people like using these maps and then annotating them, and like it's like looks so cool, right? Like the whole like map, like well used and scribbled on. There's something that I find super cool.
The history of your trip.
Yep.
Written on your map.
Yep. And or this the portage is here.
Oh, this is wrong. wrong.
So you mentioned a background in history. Do you incorporate history at all when you're creating the maps? Is there historical?
So I research, but then another thing is, I guess it's a feature, is the booklet. There's like the map notes. Again, like I don't like the text on the back of the map, so it's in a separate booklet. But I have limited space for it, so I don't go too much. For Killarney, I gave a little bit of context, because the group of 7 and the acid rain. Like, there's a few things to mention in the area, but I do the research, but I can't put too much. Like, I have like a bit of something about fishing. I love fishing. A few canoe routes, like more like of a selection, and a little bit of help, like how do you make reservations, right? Like Haliburton Island is an example where it's not through OntarioParks.com, right? So the little things like that. So I have limited space, and I think that information, like, not everybody cares, and I think that's fine. And I think also people do their research nowadays online. You don't start with the map. You start online and then you get the map. And then online you can get, everything.
And which maps do you have out now?
So I have 4 maps out, right? Wolf Crab Lakes. So that's the first map I made. There's an experiment. Kevin Callan thought it was not the greatest idea. Maybe he's right. I think it was onto something. The idea was to really use a super large scale. It's 1/16,000. It's really large scale, and it's just a small area in the Kawafa Islands signature site, provincial park. And the idea was, that'd be the perfect map for like beginners. It's like, first trip, I don't know if I'm gonna like it. It's the perfect area. It's very easy to get to, and
no portages. You put in literally at a beach, right? So it's easy.
Yeah, it's easy. It's like if you want to go make it to Crab, there's one portage. It's like 150 meters or so, and it's like flat. It's like the easiest portage ever. But there's an interesting trail that goes from Long Lake all the way up to Luncar Lake and Wolf. So I thought, that might be interesting. So that's the first map, and I think it's still interesting, but it's really like, hey, first trip, don't know where to go, take that map. There you go. This is your first trip. See if you like it. Kind of idea. Second map is Halliburton Islands water trails. So I love that area. Followed it extensively, and it's very close to the city, very easy to access, but it feels wild and it's beautiful. So, and then it is two main areas you see on the website. If you make a reservation, it's either the Poker Lake area or the Frost Center area. So like the idea is to have like, okay, both areas in one package, right? Like you get, it's the full thing about the area. Then Queen Elizabeth II Wildlands, which is non-operating park. There's no purchasable map published of that area, and I think that was missing because it's also very like quite accessible. It's not far from Toronto, and it is wild. It is teeming with wildlife, lots of marshlands, very interesting area. Different landscapes too there. And then the last is Killarney Provincial Park, right? Like the interior routes, the full park, which I think doesn't need any introduction. Love Killarney. It's stunningly beautiful. It's incredible.
Yep, it is. I'm very thankful for the Queen Elizabeth II, the Wildlands, because I trip with our eldest, and we were looking to do it. I'm praying his time works out that we can make it in there this year. The only thing I could find was the online PDF, which was a huge improvement over having nothing before.
Yeah.
But I thought, oh man, now I got to print out, whatever. I got to print it out in 16 pieces. I got to have to duct tape it all together. And then I saw you, I think probably on Dennis's on the Canoe Hound show. And I heard the words Queen Elizabeth II. Went, what? Yes, yay. Then I had to sit back and wait for it to get it as a present because I'm not allowed to buy stuff around Christmas. Cool. So
and there's more to come, but I won't talk about the next releases because these things take too
forever.
long to make. Yeah, like it's like committing to any date, or even an area. Like I may have second thoughts, right? So.
Yeah, and I would imagine, like you said, when you're correcting errors and if it leads to something else, like you don't know. You can't. It's nearly impossible to account for that. So we will wait patiently for new waterproof paper to come from your home. So you do the Kawartha Highlands, like do you actually, so you assemble the map with all the data and whatnot. Do you actually occasionally like do a route that you have mapped to see just how bang on it is?
So yes, and yes, not exactly as you put it, but yeah, all the areas where I will publish a map, I have paddled, right? Either as a family or in solo trips. But the one thing I don't think is necessary is to paddle everything, right? Every single thing. It's just not. In some areas, it's not practical. Like it's just simple as that, right? It's too big. It would take forever. You could Algonquin alone, you can spend a lifetime paddling. That's it. That can be your area, and there's enough for several lifetimes. I would argue. So that's I think that's where you rely on the community as well. Yeah, to catch up. Hey, you know what? Like this thing has moved. Like always. Like I welcome that. Like when new information, right? And then thankfully, part of my process, I can very quickly make corrections and do it right away. So that's kind of the idea. But yeah, I've been to all these places, and I do. I do use my maps when I go there. I'm not going to use another, obviously. And it's it's a good feeling when you use your own map and you're like, yeah, I think that area is really clear.
Cool.
It's a satisfying feeling.
So slightly sideways on that, how often do you manage to get out if you're literally working a job that pays the bills, working another job that is because you're a nerd, and then being a dad and all that stuff? Like how often do you get out? And
yeah, I can speak to that. So that the cool thing is that my wife and my youngest, like we go camping all the time. So that's gonna start soon. It's a bit early. It's a bit early yet. What we'll do this year, like Margot, my youngest, she's 9. Bugs are like they get to her. Like she doesn't like it, and I think last year we overshoot it a little bit. Like we went early on, like starting like what was that? Like I think April 4th is when we first got out, and we had several. Well, like full on black fly craziness going on, and this year we're gonna approach that a little bit differently. But from let's say like mid-April to November, we go as much as possible. We have typically a couple long trips in there. That's the main vacation, but we also do weekend trips. Tack on an extra day to a weekend. And yeah, we go out all the time. So that is it's a busy time because it's like, and then there's like web orders to process, and then like retailers, and then map production stuff, but then also mapping. So it gets and planning the trip, and what's the meal plan for that trip? Hydrating stuff. I'm like, yeah, busy time, but then you've got the reward, right? Like sitting at the campfire.
Yep.
It's Camper Christine, and I kind of like, you've got to do this. You've got.
Yes, we
so
know.
Like, all right, I will listen. I will listen to Christina.
She's awesome. She's awesome. Yeah, take her advice.
She knows all the things. She's been doing it for a while, and she's just, I don't know. She's a force to be reckoned with. She just go all the time. So
I agree. That's like I feel exhausting. I feel exhausted watching her. So she's amazing. She puts out content, like she makes content and publishes it like it's just constant. It's my hat off to her. I don't have that. Oh yeah, levels of energy. Yeah, the stamina is incredible.
All right, that's it for us for today. Thank you so much to our guest Arnaud from LatLong Maps. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and we'll talk to you again soon. I'm Pamela.
I'm still Tim.
And we're from supergoodcamping.com. Please do reach out to us on all the social media. We are on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and we have a YouTube channel, and we would love more subscribers on that YouTube channel. Talk to you again soon. Bye.
Bye.